Alright, let's be honest, 1080p in 2023 is kind of a cursed resolution and should only be sold at bargain bin prices. So when I see manufacturers still selling 1080p displays at premium prices in the year of our Lord, it really makes me want to start bussing. But thankfully today, that all comes to an end, because unlike other triple screen setup displays for laptops I've seen in the past, the Monduo 16 is not only a decent resolution, but it's also allegedly bright and has an unheard of refresh rate, at least in these type of screens, of 144 Hz, which is why I agreed to take a look at it after they sent it over. So let's do just that. Now, what are we talking about here? Well, the Monduo 16 Pro Duo display, what a name, has a resolution of 2560 by 1600, a refresh rate of 144 Hz. They're 16-inch screens with an aspect ratio of 16 by 10, and they allegedly have a 100% DCI P3 coverage, which sounds pretty dang good. But then we got to talk about the price, because this thing is $799. Now that is very expensive for a couple of essentially 144 Hz 1440p screens. So it better be pretty dang good coming in at that price. Now, what you're getting aside from the screens is, in terms of connectivity, 2 Type-C ports and an HDMI on each panel, so you have plenty of different options when it comes to powering and displaying on these things. So lots of different compatibility as long as your laptop is 16 inches, because that's the only thing that's going to work with these screens. Now, first taking a look at the color, thankfully it does give you quite a few options to adjust it, so I was able to get it at that 6500K white point and with a delta E of just 0.7. Now, in terms of coverage, it got 99.9% sRGB, 81.2% Adobe RGB, and 97.3 DCI P3. In terms of volume, 139.3% sRGB, 96% Adobe RGB, and 98.7% DCI P3. So overall, very good. Now, in terms of the brightness, it doesn't necessarily reach eye-searing levels, but it does do 352 nits in a 100% window and 368 nits in a 10% window, and it also has a minimum brightness of 0.22 nits, giving it a contrast ratio of 1673 to 1. So yeah, it can get decently bright for a portable display, but it's not necessarily going to be eye-popping HDR. Now, speaking of HDR, yes, it does support it. It doesn't have local dimming or anything like that, so it's not going to be anything crazy. But if you enable HDR so that you can use it on maybe your main display, it does look good and true to how it should look versus SDR if you enable it. So no issues there, which is honestly my main concern. Now, in terms of the UFO test, I'll say that it's pretty decent. Of course, it's going to fall far short of OLED and stuff like that, and even faster LCDs can look better. But overall, although it does have some blurring to it, it's not terrible, and to be using as secondary displays, this is definitely more than good enough. And now let's go ahead and talk about the finish, viewing angles, and uniformity. Now, the finish is using a matte finish, which, to be honest with you guys, I get that people bring these things all over the place and there might be some glare, but in my opinion, matte finish doesn't really do a whole lot to cut down on the glare. It just smears that light all across the screen. So I think this is a worse approach. I would have liked to see a glossy finish, especially considering that the pixel density on these displays is very high and the colors are pretty good too. So it's a bit of a shame that we're using a matte finish here, but ultimately, I don't think it's as big of a deal as it is if we're talking about maybe premium TVs and gaming monitors that you're going to be using for HDR. Now, talking about the viewing angles, honestly, they're not really too good, and the uniformity was pretty average, so nothing too crazy there. But if you're expecting to be looking at this thing at a 90-degree angle, might not be the right choice for you. Now, talking about the right choice, should you be buying this display? And honestly, guys, here's what I'm going to say. While this is probably one of the best solutions for trying to get work done on the go, and that's a big reason as to why I wanted to look at this, because I often find myself on the go and I have to bring my laptop, so this can be really nice to have some high resolution and good looking fast displays so that I'm not feeling hampered by something that doesn't look or feel good to use. Despite that, at $800, I'm going to be honest with you guys, that is just too much for me to recommend a couple of essentially 1440p monitors. Now, if it drops down to like $500, I think there is a place for it in the market because these things are just typically very expensive, and in comparison to what else is available on the market, this will be a pretty decent deal. But at $800, it's just too much for the relatively average performance that you're getting out of this thing, other than the very good color coverage and volume that I was able to record. So overall, it's very good, but it's just simply too expensive for me to recommend. Whether you're looking to connect a new console, gaming PC, or just need a fast and reliable HDMI cable to connect over long distances, Rupro has you covered with their Rupro 8K HDMI 2.1 fiber optic cable, available in sizes ranging from 3 to 165 feet, and can deliver a perfect full 48 gigabits per second connection over distances other cables could only dream of reaching. And with 48 gigabits per second of bandwidth, it can easily drive 8K at 60 FPS or 4K at 120 FPS HDR10 video through its ultra-thin, flexible, and durable housing, and it even supports eARC. So if you're in the market for a cable that can drive a beautiful new TV or monitor, be sure to check out Rupro on Amazon today.